My name is Ian Barker, and I represent an organization called the CGIAR, which is the alliance of the various crop centers around the world. And then we work with national agricultural research partners in each country to assist them in the breeding of new varieties.
My name is Jenny Nida. I work with ANGRA. I am currently the head for seed research, seed production and innovations at the Center of Excellence for Seed Systems in Africa, which is one of the flagship business lines of seed systems hosted by ANGRA.
My name is Macy Kaiser. I'm the Executive Director for Seeds of Change in the United States.
My name is Claude Kakule. I'm the representative and country director of the World Food Program, and I'm based in Guinea-Bissau.
My name is Deborah Rubin. I'm the director and founder of Cultural Practice, LLC, which is a small women-owned company in Bethesda, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C.
So I'm Dan Higgins. I'm regional specialist at IFAD, International Fund for Agricultural Development.
Our number one stakeholder really is the national agricultural research programs, that develop new varieties. We help them develop and release new varieties in their respective countries. But we also work with organizations, seed companies, sometimes directly, sometimes through national partners. We work, for example, even with the seed system group here in this meeting, and help us get these varieties out. Part of the problem is building awareness of new varieties with farmers, and of course seed system group, working with FIPS, are an excellent partner in terms of building awareness of farmers of new varieties. And also they tend to work in countries that we historically have not worked in, right? The sort of left behind perhaps countries that maybe some of the funders, spent less time with in the past.
Africa is really behind when it comes to seed systems improvement. And as far back as 2006, when ANGRA was formed, we recognized that one of the key areas that drive seed system improvement is improved crop varieties. And improved crop varieties are so important because farmers actually need new technology, particularly in terms of crop varieties. And so working in African countries, where we started with 18 countries that time, later on, as Seed Systems Group came on board and has now expanded to another 15 countries.
Sustaining agriculture in Africa is very important, and if we didn't have the sun, the seeds, and the soil, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and we are blessed with that. So with Seeds of Change, we agree and think deeply that we should invest in funding agriculture here in Africa, because there is a lot of land to be developed and a lot of farmers here on the land that could use the methodologies and technologies to be able to do proper farming techniques.
Our mandate is to help countries globally, but mainly in Africa, to fight hunger. And we have all realized that we are not on track. And that's why in 2021, the UN Secretariat called for a summit on food system transformation. And I fully believe that transforming food system in Africa is the way to go, to allow or to help smallholder farmers not only to produce enough for them to eat, but also to get a surplus that they can sell on the market and then diversify their livelihood and also income.
We do a lot of work, have done a lot of work on looking at integrating attention to gender in development projects. So my particular focus is on agriculture. And I got interested in the question of seed systems development when I was looking at research on the whole value chain in agriculture, and it was clear that attention to seeds had not been very clearly focused in understanding the gender dimensions of that. How are women and men involved? Where are they facing constraints, and what kind of opportunities do they have?
We're supporting breeders who are developing new varieties, and there are people out there looking for those varieties. They could be seed companies, and often it's a question of making sure that people who are looking, for varieties can be connected, with the people who are, providing varieties. And sometimes there's a sort of a mismatch and asymmetry of information about who has what and who's looking for what. equally, we hope at the end of the day it's farmers that need to make these decisions. I mean, they vote with their feet. At the end of the day, they go to an agri-dealer, they buy the seed, or they don't. And so obviously, if you can build awareness with farmers, you know, what's good. And typically farmers are interested in things they can touch and feel themselves. They want to try something. They might talk to their neighbors. And so this idea that we're hearing in this meeting about distributing large, you know, numbers of small bags, someone can try for a small amount of money maybe, or, you know, and at low risk basically. And people will try small amounts of new things.
So we have really seen a lot of traction in terms of crop variety improvement, where farmers are accessing new improved varieties. These are high-yielding varieties. They are resistant to disease. They are high in nutrient content. They are diverse. They cover many crops, from maize to legumes to root and tubers to oil crops. And so this is really important. And one of the biggest breakthroughs has been that SSG, working even with ANGRA, even in all these countries, we are able to release new varieties which are being adopted by farmers.
In order to make this particular model work, it is going to take funding and support. And so supporting the VBA, village-based advisor, small pack model, and to go even deeper into that with making sure that they understand how to do deep tillage and seed placement and all of the other things that come along with being successful at agriculture in Africa is equally as important. And so finding funding sources to be able to replicate that model is definitely a need, and to be able to come together with an organization like FIPS to be able to provide that to them is needed in order to make this successful around the world.
Yeah, so IFAD's a very interesting organisation where most of our funding goes directly to governments, but we have a small pot of money for very strategic and highly impactful grants to NGOs working in specific situations. And we now give a grant to SSG, who also work with FIPS, and because we saw it as a very highly impactful initiative to work with. Firstly, because they work in very difficult situations. Countries and contexts that a lot of other NGOs and governments and institutions don't work. So that was one of the key selling points for working with SSG, because they managed to work with different stakeholders in these countries. Yeah.
So a lot of our work has to do with trying to help programs of different types in agriculture to make sure that the benefits that they're offering do accrue to both women and men. So in another example, we worked on an evaluation of Harvest Plus and their efforts to biofortify beans with iron in Rwanda. And in Rwanda, historically, women had been providing the labor and doing the marketing to the extent that there was marketing. It was relatively small years ago of these beans. But the introduction of high iron beans actually caused a lot of interest in commercializing them, even though initially the intent was that they would be used for home consumption and improve the nutrition of the entire family. So with the commercialization, you had a lot of men also being interested in this area, which had previously been under the control of women. So we would raise those questions with the implementers to say, what are you doing to track the change in the amount of beans that are being marketed? What are you doing to track how much money is actually going back into the household? What are you doing to track whether the household nutrition is actually increasing? And since this was at the beginning of the project, these questions hadn't been asked very much. We're now 20 years in, and we do see some results of improved nutrition and improved income in the household.
You know, the people who fund this work want to know whether their investments are, you know, paying off. We equally want to know, to give feedback to the breeders. How do the breeders know if they're producing what farmers want if we're not getting feedback? And so obviously, if you are carrying out awareness creation trials, obviously you've got to spend time asking people as they come out of those trials, what do you think? You know, and they can even vote. You can even have participatory selection where people actually give them cards to vote on what they like, a red card or a green card, and they can even put it on. But equally, we're interestingly looking now at we're working on some apps, like crowdsourced apps, so that we give them to like extension workers. Say here in Kenya we're working with, say, Nakuru County extension workers. And on this app, when they're in the field looking at a variety, they can record what they're seeing, what people are growing, and how much they're growing. And that information, if you like, is flowing out of the field back so that we can then tell the story better about what's working and what's not working.
Seeds is everything, and I will say improved seeds is everything. You cannot transform agri-food system without transforming improved seed system itself. And that's where we, as we work closely with smallholder farmers, we have realized the big challenge most of these smallholder farmers have in accessing to improved seeds, but also in accessing to basic knowledge that they can use and apply to improve the yield and also the income.
At other times, we're looking at other parts of the value chain to understand not just the producers, but also the marketers, and now especially looking at consumers as well, and the way in which consumers can help to influence what it is, what are the traits that are being encouraged by the breeders or for the breeders to produce in the breeding of their crops.
We still see in the region what we call a yield gap, and it's difference between different countries in the region. And you look at that gap, and that gap is made up of knowledge of how to grow a crop. It could be like, fertilizer use, but still a large part of the gap is quality of seed of new varieties. And typically we see people, with new seed, new varieties, are going to increase their yields by 30%. Let's be conservative. Sometimes you see more than that, but it can have an enormous impact. And of course, things aren't staying the same, and our growers are going to face new conditions in the future, sadly, with climate change. And we're equally going to have to provide them, with new tools, to address these changes, so they can cope with drought or heat or whatever other, shocks they're going to see in the future. So yeah, the impact is enormous, and we need to protect them against the changes that they are going to see in the future.
So the thing we like about working with SSG is that they are building climate resilience in a very efficient way, working directly with smallholders so that their crop production through these improved seeds is high yielding, so that means they make more money and improves their food security, but also it's resilient to these climatic shocks and stresses that are getting more and more increased. So they have more resilient livelihoods and also this climate resilience as well. So this is the big selling point with working with SSG, and they're very efficient. They can cover a large amount of smallholders through their village-based advisor model, which means that even with limited funding they can have a very strong outreach.
Our partnership is with FIPS, and we believe that they continue to grow and develop in their training model to be able to spread this information to all countries in Africa. And so we are working alongside them in the funding aspect of making sure that this information, this content, this training to be successful is able to happen. And so they really, to continue to do this in the future, we will continue to walk alongside of them, and we encourage others to do the same, because they have the right people in the right places to be able to make this a success moving forward now and in the future.
We're trying to create opportunities for both women and men in different parts of the chain. And if you're increasing the opportunities in some parts for women and other parts for men, that's fine. The key is not to develop the chain in such a way that the lower benefits are only the jobs that women take, and that the higher benefiting jobs or the higher income jobs are the ones that are given to or that men are trained for. And I think identifying those kinds of patterns and trying to find out what needs to happen to overcome it is very important.
The seed system portfolio is so wide, and not one institution can claim to do it alone. Yeah. And that's why I've mentioned an institution like Angra has to work with seed system group, farm inputs, promotion services, FIPS. We work with 1CG. We need our seed companies. We need our agro dealers. We need other development partners, so that we can be able to all work together. The reason is there are so many, moving parts. For you to move a seed system, you need research to work. you need extension to work, you need policy, particularly governments. Let me not say that governments are one of the key and most important partners, especially when it comes to policies in seed system and also in breeding.
Hopefully in the future, as we attract other financiers and as we generate more results, which we can then use to show as evidence to others, we can crowd in more financing. And then ideally, in the longer term, is that organisations like SSG can gradually move out and these systems can sustain themselves with the work of government, private sector and the farmers themselves, so that they don't need so much cash injection and support.
This is the way to go, organizing a symposium where you have both farmers, farm organization, the private sector, the government authorities, but also the donor community to discuss and put the improved seed system on the agenda. And that's the reason why I'm happy to be here to learn more from key food system actors, but also to provide and share my own experience on the ground with farmers and also with farmer organizations. Thank you so much.